All right, I was trying something new today, and it didn't work, so go back to the same.
Is this an easy one?
I don't know.
For me.
That depends on you.
Oh, so no, okay.
Feel bad for Brock. Brock probably.
So if
Well, no.
you understood what we did yesterday,
See?
this is a small extension of that. If you struggled with what we did yesterday, or you didn't do what we did yesterday, or haven't looked at it, or been trying to work on the homework or whatever, this is going to be hard because this basically builds exactly on what we did yesterday. So from what we did yesterday, we have says solve the equation, but let's factor this. So from what we did yesterday, x cubed, q cubed minus q squared minus 30 cubed. Now we have equals 0. Step 1 is the factor. So from what we did yesterday, what would be our common factor that we take out? Q. So if we take out a q, we then have q squared minus q minus 30. Now we're going to factor that. What are two numbers that multiply to give us negative 30, add to give us negative 1? Multiply to give us negative 30, add to give us negative 1. 6 and 5 give us the 30. Now to get the negative and the negative 1, it's going to be negative 6 and 5. So we get q x plus 5 x minus 6.
Where can pull the negative 1 from here?
That's the middle. So we were looking at this right here. So multiply to give us the last term, add to give us the middle term. It's the number in front of the q. Now, how many of you would prefer I never use q again? Just use x for everything. Make your life so much simpler. If you're that person, just change the q to an x. It doesn't change the problem at all. We're just intentionally switching variables around just to kind of keep track of it. But if you're a person that's like, forget this, I just want to use x's.
Well, my q's turned into 9.
Right, so you're, right, it's kind of like if you use a z, it kind of starts to look like a 2. So, now, so far this is just what we did yesterday, isn't it? Here's the one thing that's been different so far. Yesterday, did we have the equals 0 there?
No.
No. Do you remember what the equals 0 means from before? If you remember, so let's review real quick. If I have, let's go with. We've looked at factoring, right? This is the last chapter. For those of you who still got to take the test, right? Last chapter. Then we also looked at last chapter. We put an equal sign there. We did the exact same thing, but when there's an equal sign there, that would mean that you would have x plus 2 is 0, x plus 6 is 0, and so you would get, from x plus 2, you would get negative 2, and from x plus 6, you would get negative 6. And when it was equal to 0, we got these two answers. You're doing the same kind of stuff with factoring, but they're just two different problems. Okay? Remember that? Doing the same thing. This is what we did yesterday. This is what we're doing today. So what does that mean back here? What are going to be my answers here? Negative 5 and positive 6. However, here's what's different. We now have a third answer. Is there any number with this?
No, 1.
1, but We go back to here.
What we got? All
If I have something like that, think of this.
gotta distribute again.
Does subtracting 0 do anything? No, right? So when you see just x or just q, really what makes this 0? What goes with this one? X minus 2, what's your x?
2.
2. X minus 0, what's your x? 0. So when there's just an x there, or just a q there, my answers, and I even wrote x myself, didn't I? My answers are just -5, 6, and 0. So how many answers do we have? 3. Here's the trick. If you ever want to know, it's back there. The fundamental theorem of algebra, which sounds like it's really important, but you know,
I know
it basically just says this. If that is a cube, how many answers do you have?
3.
That's it. That's the fundamental theorem of algebra. How many answers does this one have?
6.
There you go.
Well,
That's it. It's that simple.
it's simple to say, but
All
I
right.
have to get 6.
So let's do this one. What would be step 1?
Not factor.
Factor out a
Factor.
common factor, which is just k. And we have k squared plus 6k plus 9. And then just like yesterday, it'll always go like that. So now you're looking for two numbers that multiply to give you 9, add to give you 6.
3 and 3.
3 and 3. So this is going to be k plus 3, k plus 3. K gives you what is the answer when it's just a variable?
0.
0. K plus 3. -3. K plus 3.
-3.
Negative. Now, I'm going to write these both down right now, just because, as we said, that's a cube, so how many answers should it have?
3.
3. So it does have 3. It just so happens that one of them, they call this a double 0 or a double root or a double answer, whatever, because it's the same number twice. Yes, I know that's the same thing, but to follow the pattern, if you get two factors that are the same, you're going to get the same thing. So, small little step from what we did yesterday, right? Same kind of factoring we did yesterday, now we're writing down the answers. Let's do the next one here. Then we'll come down here with the calculator. So here, remember, to do these problems, they always have to be equal to what?
0.
0. So my first step here is to set it equal to 0. They always, always, always have to be equal to 0. What's the common factor I can pull out? In terms of the numbers, it is 8. In terms of the u, it is
0.
remember, it's always going to be this last one. 4.
Yeah.
Because the other side of this, with what we're doing, this right here is always going to end up as a square. Always, because that's quadratic, so we can factor it. So if I take 8u to the 4th out of this, what's 32 divided by 8? 4.
Is it -0 equals 0?
Equals.
Oh, the minus.
How do we factor that? How do I factor, I'll put it over here. How do I factor u squared minus 4? There's no middle term.
U 0.
So I just add a 0. So this is really u squared plus 0x minus 4. And what are two numbers that multiply to give me negative 4, add to give me 0?
2 and negative 2.
2 and negative. So over here I get 8 u to the 4th. It is really weird using u, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what are my zeros? The first one, 8u to the 4th is just the variable, that's always 0. U minus 2 is a positive 2. U plus 2 is a negative 2. Now, how many answers are we supposed to have? 6. How many do we end up with?
3. 4, yeah, 0.
But think about, I'm running out of room up here. Think about u to the 4th. What does that actually equal? What does u to the 4th mean? Let's go back like pre-algebra days. U, right? So couldn't I write this as u times u times u times u like that? No, we'd never do it. I'm just trying to get you to understand. So as up here, we had negative 3 twice. What am I going to end up having here? 0 how many times? 4 times. So really what I end up having here is 0, 0, 0, 0, 2, negative 2, because I have 4 zeros. Okay? You can just write your answer like that, but if you're looking at it and thinking, well, that's to the 6th, I need 6 answers. What's going to happen is you're going to have a multiple, I don't know what we call that, quartic answer? Quad answer? I don't know. I don't know what it's an economy with names. What does a quad mean? 4. 4? When we call quadratics, it's in the x squared. So does quad mean 4 or does quad mean square? So
Where and
So anyway. Quad, actually think quadrilaterals, 4 sides. Quad is actually 4. They call it quadratics because x squared goes in the area, right? You multiply the 2 sides. Yeah.
So with the 8, you don't need to do anything. Just
Nope. Because can 8 be 0? No, so we don't need to worry about it. All right. Now, let's do this. Next thing. Take this part right here. 8u to the 6th minus 32u to the 4th. And plug that in your calculator. Go to y equals. And put that in the calculator. Now we don't use u. We're going to use x when we're on the calculator, right? Wrong.
Oh, I didn't get it.
Yeah. Let me change my color here so we can see it a little bit better.
Oh.
Let's go red. So when we graph it, where does it cross the x-axis? At 2, at negative 2, and it also touches at 0. What were our answers?
0,
0,
negative 2.
2, negative 2.
So we can use that to check our answers.
So we're able to
I'm using that to find the answers.
graph it to find our answers. Now, why is that useful? What happens when we have something like this, 5 and 6, that we can't graph, or we can't factor, excuse me. It's not something you can factor. So if it's not something we can factor, we have to graph it on our calculator. So graph number 5. So x cubed minus 4x plus 2. Okay. Put that into your calculator.
I don't think I have a cube button.
You got to use the caret.
Yeah.
Now, if you really hate the caret, there is a Q button. But I think it's more difficult.
Probably, yeah.
You have to hit math, and you go there, and there is a Q. I think that's longer than just hitting the caret
Yeah.
and hitting 3. But it is there. X cubed minus 4x. I forget what this would be. Yeah. Plus 2. Remember, every time you graph something, you always want to hit what? Zoom 6. Hit zoom 6, and you get to that. Now, as you notice, this can't factor, which obviously we can tell at the beginning, but you'll also notice one of the things that tells us it wouldn't be able to factor is notice where it crosses.
It's random.
I wasn't going to say random, but they're not nice numbers, right? You're not going to get like 2, -3, 0. You're going to get some decimals. Do you remember how to use our 0 button to find our decimals?
Oh yeah.
Window.
Second, trace. And we're going down to 0. Remember using this? Did we use this in here yet?
We've done.
Oh, we haven't. Okay, let's talk about this then. So here, let's go through this again. So we want to find, how many answers do we have?
I know how to do
3.
1, 2, 3, because we have a cubic. Okay. So what we're going to do is go to second trace, and we go down to 0. And you have your cursor. Okay. Now, it's going to give you directions on what to do here. Notice what it says on the screen. Left bound. So here's what you're going to do. Move your cursor close to where it crosses the x-axis right there. We're going to try to find that one. Now, move your cursor to the left. Here is the hard part that people struggle with. Which arrow here is left? Right? So you're just going to go to that arrow and hit it a couple times. That's good enough. And then hit enter. Now it says to go right. So you want to go back close to the point and go to the right. And hit enter. Now, what you should see, and depending on your calculator, so you maybe have older ones that may not be there, you should see these 2 lines.
Nope.
And the answer I'm looking for is between those 2 lines. I hit enter again, and there's my answer. -2.21432.
That's kind of cool.
Amazing. You got there.
If you type it in backwards, here's the good thing about this. It is not possible to do it wrong.
Well,
If you do it wrong, it will give you an error, is what I'm saying. You won't get a wrong answer. If it works and it gives you an answer, it will be the right answer. Okay.
There.
See if you can find the last 2. Okay? Then I'm going to come around and help people. I'm going to write down our answers here. This was -2.21432. Okay? See if you can find the others. You should have all 3 answers. I'll walk around for those of you that are trying to figure it out. Take it, work in the calculator. Okay. Okay. So,
What do you mean?
Yep. Now it's gonna ask for the left. It's gonna ask for the right. Go back to the as close as you can, and you go right up. Yes, and move back close. You get it over here. What's that? You can't get to the 0 by trace. You can't use trace. You have to use the 0 button here. So you don't want to use trace, because if you use trace, you're not going to get your answer close enough. Second, you hit the trace button, but you go down to 0.
You can't just hit the 0 button on this. Can't you?
No.
Oh, I didn't know.
So listen.
What?
I feel like we've used this before, but I don't know which class.
Oh, it was,
But I don't know.
And did we use this? I thought we used it early geometry.
You might have.
that was a long time ago. If we used it, it was either middle school or freshman year, I forget.
Well, I mean, it's just a middle school.
It was either 8th or freshman.
You probably used it in algebra 1.
Kudos to you.
I remember.
Kudos to you, you know stuff about it, but I remember some stuff.
Well, that thing is
Actually, that's pretty
not as important, but I do remember that. Yeah, it's not. Are we supposed to write the whole thing out?
So,
I just
your answer here are those 3 numbers. I'm going to go through again how I found those if you're still trying to figure it out. But I always wanted to write those down for those of you that are trying to see to get it, if you're getting it right or not. Okay.
So many numbers. We just round on the test.
Yeah, I usually go like 3 decimal places normally.
Like the hundreds.
Yeah, 1,000. Yeah. I usually say go 3 decimal places, and then you can just like chop it off. I don't care if you round or chop it off or, you know.
Yeah. Maybe the.
When you get into it, those you in chemistry, should we get into like same things and
No.
rounding?
No, not again.
Keep it in there.
All right.
Actually, give it to them. See what they.
I forget.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna go over again.
Yes. All right. So let's go through here how we do this. Okay. So let me walk through it for those of you. Okay. Now let me just say, when I'm using my calculator up here, if you're trying to follow along what I'm doing on the calculator, watch. Every time I hit a button, it turns red, so you can see exactly what button I hit. If I move my hand around, you're like, what did you just hit? So we go to second, and you can see up above top it says calculate, up in blue, which is the trace button. We go down to 0. We are using 0 because our equation is equal to 0. Okay, that's why that's there. So then we go to 0, we hit enter. We go to whatever x-intercept, whatever 0, where it crosses the x-axis you're trying to find. You just move left and right until you get to whatever one you're trying to look for. Get as close as you can to it. Right about there. Now, it's going to ask you to find the left. So now go left of where you're at. 2 times is good. And hit enter. Then you go back to the point you're trying to find, and it's going to tell you to go right. Now notice, it's right and left. If I'm at this point and I go left, I actually go below, right? And I go right, I go above. At this point, if I go left, I'm above. If I go right, I go below. Depends if things are going up or going down. You move left or right. Go to the right, hit enter. Now I go back to the guess in the middle, and I hit enter. And there's my answer. Yeah.
Forget how to get to like the actual putting the
The graph?
yeah. No, like the point thing. What do you call that?
The cursor?
Yeah.
You don't put that in. So you put it into here, right?
Right, no, how do you get that on the line?
And then you go here, so we go to second, go back to
Oh, you
trace.
don't have to do anything. So
Nope. And you just go to 0, and it brings it up. And so then I move to here. I go left, enter. Go back right, enter. Go to my point, enter.
There's none.
I just thought there was some extra stuff here that you get the thing, get the cursor
Nope.
off.
Nope. All right, yeah.
I was just on my right now and clicked enter and it took me to move it down to the cursor.
You don't have to. If you just hit enter again, it'll work. All right, let's do this. We'll try one here. First off, look at the next one. What is the first thing you notice about number 6?
Equals 1.
So what's the first thing we have to do?
That's 0.
We got to make it 0. So step 1. You have to subtract 1. And do that.
So it's
All right. We have about 8 minutes left here. I've just passed out the homework. First off, on the homework, see the 2 at the bottom, 7A and B. Don't worry about those. Cross those off. We didn't get there today. I'm not going to worry about those. But what I want you to do, I'm going to do this one up here just to see if you check if you get it. I want you to try to do, on the homework, do 5 and 6 right now because I want you to do those on a calculator. The first 3 you can do, that's the factoring, you can do without a calculator for those of you that don't have one. But I want to give you time in class here to do those 2. If you don't have a calculator, you can do it now in the next 10 minutes to get it done so that if you don't have a calculator at home, you're okay. Does that make sense? So try those 2. I will try to, if you're trying to figure out you can't get them to work, I will try to come around to answer questions. Do 5 and 6 on the homework. Don't worry about this one. 5 and 6 on the homework so you can get those done before you leave today and you return your calculator. Okay? All right. Both homeworks, this one and the other worksheet, are due on Monday. Okay?